Those exercises are going to injure you eventually. Stay with us on this video and we'll share with you the 5 most commonly prescribed exercises that are causing you the little niggles that you wander around with every day in life, or have the potential to cause you big injuries that you just don't realize. So the very exercises your trainer is prescribing you could be the reason why you're walking around with bad knees, bad hips, bad shoulders, or these little niggles you just can't seem to shift. Many of the most commonly prescribed exercises are very high risk versus very little reward, and have alternatives that will deliver exactly the same reward whilst removing the risk and help alleviate some of them little niggles or correct the issues you have in your knees, hips and shoulders. Exercise number 1 is the burpee, an exercise that seems to be thrown around more than any exercise in history and thrown in all sorts of programs for all sorts of reasons without any considerations towards the impact this exercise could be having on the knees or the back of the clients. Even when you remove the press-ups and the clap above the head, which I'm not sure what it does, it's adding some complexity and some risk to an exercise that just doesn't need it. So first and foremost, how people most do it is there, straight away they're coming down through the knees, putting a lot of pressure. Now for a healthy knee this isn't a problem, but as soon as someone's kind of new at exercise or has some knee-related issues or maybe overweight, that's a lot of pressure to go through that range of the knee, and then we're adding them, asking them to jump, and then even come up, and there's some sort of clap sometimes which I don't get. Now for someone who's beginner, a better way to do this exercise might be to try and keep the heels flat on the floor and work on some mobility first. So get them to come down with the heels on the floor. Can they get their hands on the floor before they're jumping back into a solid plank position and jumping back in and springing up? By doing it that way, you take out all of the risk, add in some mobility elements, and still get the conditioning element of the exercise that it should be in there for. So try making that shift with the burpee and you should see some changes to your knees, hips and back. Exercise number 2 is the box jump. Very heavily prescribed in gyms across the nation and very often prescribed in ways of developing conditioning. In my opinion, now I think this is more of a power exercise, but if it is used as a conditioning drill, the element of risk is quite high because as we continue to jump up and down off this box, there's that element of kind of when you're coming off the box, there's a danger to when we jump off. Secondly, as we tire, there's every chance that feet can come up and drag the shins down the box. And I've seen it happen all the time where people go down, scrape the front of their shins off. Secondly, when people do seem to be using it for power and about how high they can jump, it seems that the ego takes over. And all of a sudden, rather than being about how high we can jump, it becomes a mobility test. And it becomes people are, rather than jumping up where... Now for me that's not that's not saying how high you can jump, it's how quickly you can pull up your legs. And if you're weightlifting, maybe it's not a bad drill to work in that catch and speed of legs. But rather than working on a box jump, would it not be more efficient to maybe work on some jump mechanics, work on a good solid start position and just spring and land. So you're working on both jump and landing mechanics in the same way. It removes all the risk. And even if you do want to take that into kind of a conditioning drill, you can do 40 seconds safely. And it's still going to elevate the heart rate, but you are genuinely working on the ability to jump high, rather than just get your legs onto a box. So maybe try just a good quality jump, as high as you can, rather than the ego-driven jumping onto a box. Exercise number 3 is the kettlebell swing. Again, all too often I see this inappropriately prescribed to people's clients. One, because they're not very good at that hinge and they can't get the hinge working effectively. And 2, they're trying to dominate with their arms. This exercise is predominantly to strengthen the hamstrings, the glutes and the lower back. So when you're using their arms, they're not working. And when you are rounding or not hinging effectively, you're going to get yourself in some trouble in terms of back pain. So all too often we'll see this where people are there and there's this throw and there's this high kettlebell coming through and the hips follow. Well, actually what we're looking for is a hinge. So it's a good solid hinge and a snap through as they're coming through with that kettlebell. An easy solution to this is for someone who can't hinge, is just to maybe bring in some high rep hinge work. So just there, you're going to strengthen the same muscles, but you can prescribe the load a little better, and you reduce the risk while strengthening the same exercise, the same muscles. When transitioning across from that good quality hinge into the kettlebell swing, we can just lock the arms. So we often don't get our arms locked. It doesn't look great, but it is strengthening that movement. We'll start to do a fast hip hinge. It's there, and it's just a fast hip hinge. And then as they begin to lead their arms out and the hips begin to work, we can start to allow the full swing of the kettlebell. And when people are ready, we can even take it into that crescent swing where we're taking it all the way up. But ultimately, if you're using the kettlebell swing, it must be done in a good hinge, and it must be done safely to try and strengthen the hamstrings, glutes and lower back. Maybe try it like that, or just regress the exercise down into a high rep stiff leg or Romanian deadlift. Exercise number 4 is the plank. We've all seen it, everyone does it. It's thrown into programs left, right and centre, and it's supposedly there to strengthen that core position. Now with the plank, it's really important that we're trying to hold it. It's called a plank because we want to be in a solid position. But the common position is to drop down on our elbows, to come on our feet, and then you start to see people just hanging on, doing it for time, and no longer is that core doing its job. So the way we like to program it and like to strengthen it and create this active position for people is to just start in a box. Just start in that box position, get everything nice and strong, grip the floor with the fingers, straight arms as well, so we're starting to build into a potential press up, and just box up. Just hold that position there. As you come up, you will start to see the core switch on. And that's all we're trying to feel, is that little bracing of the core and that neutral spine remain, because the plank is there to hold a steady neutral spine. As we develop and get better at it, we can just come in, straighten the leg, and then all of a sudden we're in that nice, strong plank position. And get good at holding neutral spine whilst using the plank. Now the final and potentially most controversial exercise is any form of weightlifting technique. Now that can be anything from the clean, the jerk or the snatch family. And it's not that these exercises are bad, we love them and we love to develop our clients towards them. But all too often they're used as a conditioning tool, and they're used too easily and too readily with novice populations. And anytime you bring conditioning and complexity into the same arena, there's a high chance of injury, and actually you will get less bang for your buck than if you separated the two. So what we suggest is trying to keep your conditioning separate and just take weightlifting out of that all entirely. And for a novice lifter, or if you are just starting out, learn the basics. Learn things like the hinge, the squat, which will give you more bang for your buck. You will learn them quicker, and you'll be able to lift to a level that allows you to get results. And as you progress, and if you want to move into weightlifting, start with the simple elements of it, which are just that hinge, the pull, maybe it's that exchange from the pull into that rack position. So start doing muscle cleans, and then you can start taking them from there into front squats, and maybe it's putting some basic complexes together with very simple variations of the lift. But going straight into weightlifting techniques and throwing weights up for reps is a recipe for disaster. So try and eradicate them. I hope you've enjoyed what we've talked about. If you have any questions, you've got any queries about any of them exercises, or you think your trainer might be prescribing them incorrectly to you, give us a shout. We'd love to help you in any which way we can.